Lead us right into the start of this, which would be the Indiegogo campaign. 9 days in, 80% funded when I just checked. Well over 500 backers. That has got to be pretty awesome feeling just 9 days into this.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm looking at what I accomplished the last time, and it took me 2 months to get to 27,000 with 657 backers. And this time, I've got less backers so far, but we've well surpassed the goal in just 9 days in. So I'm pretty thrilled with that. I feel like that means it's a reflection of like how far I've come as an artist, and just like introducing more people to the music, and people are getting more excited about this little niche that I'm in, And I feel like, so yeah, um, it's a big marker for me as an independent artist for sure.
Yeah, and that's a pretty good number to fundraise for, and I mean, knock on wood, it looks like you'll pretty easily get there. Still some work to do, but it's looking
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's not a small number, and so yeah, always going in with a little trepidation, but I know my numbers too because I'm really dedicated to um, basically reverse engineering the outcome that I'm really hoping for, and so I wouldn't have launched it if I didn't feel confident I could reach that with my fans. And so it's a little bit about numbers and a little bit about obviously like coming down to the music, it has to be good and there has to be demand for it. But at the end of the day, I actually felt that it was a conservative number. So I felt like, well, I want to be conservative with what I'm trying to raise, but also stretch myself and challenge myself. And um, also, a lot of it is like a reflection of like the cost of the album itself. So it's, I don't have the benefit of a label to uh, front the funds to create the album. I'm having to do that all myself. So it's the whole thing is a huge, it's a big responsibility, but it's a challenge with a lot of rewards too, because I get to say I did it. I did it myself, and I did it with my fans, and we didn't need, a middleman to make it happen. That's pretty rewarding.
And you got to do it your way, not someone telling you to change this song or throw this song out. I mean, this is your album through and through.
Exactly.
That's very cool. So for this Indiegogo, this one's a little different. So if I understand correctly, the album's basically done. You're using this campaign to get the album out to the masses and actually promote the album and what needs to be done kind of after you record an album.
Yeah, so it was very different. The last time I did a campaign, I hadn't even really finished writing the album yet. It was very much in its infancy stage, whereas this time the album's essentially done, and we're just wrapping up details. And this is really more about launching the album, and as a segue to really a big, it's basically a big giant pre-sale campaign in essence. So I think that's one distinction that's important to make, is that not all fundraisers are about charity, right? This isn't charity. This isn't I can't make this album without you. Not this time. Last time it was. But this is more about pre-selling very limited exclusive bundles that you won't be able to get anywhere else. So it's really more about the experience and the fun of it, and then launching it, and then there will be the actual launch itself. So this is part of a several month campaign in essence to launch the actual album. So it's just part of the fun of it.
That is. That's very cool, and it's unique. You don't see it very often, and I like the way you've kind of made it simpler. The bundles are great, and I highly recommend you check them out. But I mean, you see so many artists will have like 50 things on their Indiegogo site, and
Mhm.
30 of them will sell one or two items, two or three items. It's like all that work and ordering hats and ordering mugs, and you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And you kept it fairly simple, and but they're great packages. They're well put together, and I think that's kind of a better way to do it. I think that was a smart tactic.
Thank you. I was actually really inspired by Winter Sun's campaign, actually, when I saw, I don't know if they realized how brilliant and genius they were when they only had a couple of bundle options at first. And because in marketing, and I'm really heavily into digital marketing, in marketing, when you give people too many options, they choose none. And that's just typically, it's overwhelm, right? It's too many choices. And I loved that idea of just like simplifying it, make it amazing, make it a really good deal, make it something that they have to have, that they can't live without, and then just give fewer options. And so I think yesterday, the day before, released a third option, but I only did that. I didn't have plans to do that. I did that as a result of listening to my fans who were begging me for it. So I said, okay, we can do that. And I don't have plans to release another one yet unless there's some kind of crazy demand for something else. So if there may come a time where people are asking me for just the digital albums or something like that, and I may come up with that, but there's no plans yet so far. So keeping it really simple, making it as amazing as possible, and just fewer options. And so far it's working really, really well.
It is, and the bundles themselves have unique items in them, so it's not like they're just cookie cutter T-shirt CD. I mean, you're getting, in the big bundle, you get that special box, which is really beautiful, and so there are all sorts of neat little perks thrown in there. So it's like the items are all there, but instead of having 30 of them, they're just packaged nicely.
Exactly. Yeah. The handmade boxes are very special. Like, they really are handmade. We've been actually working on them for months. And I think we planned on having them like a year ago. So, wow. These things take time. It's a lot of effort. And people, it's like the iceberg picture that sometimes people see, where they only see the top of the iceberg, but they're not seeing all the whole, 98% of the rest of the iceberg is under the water. They're not seeing all the work that went into it. They're not seeing, the months and months and months of planning that I've been doing for this, and, the hours I'm putting in every day just promoting it, and just everything that's going into it. It's a lot of work, and it's been really thought through. And I think that's another thing that people don't do, is they just launch a campaign and expect magic to happen, and that's not how you succeed. You need to reverse engineer it. Like, think about the math. Like, what I thought, if people just picked the lowest bundle that we had, the $65 one, how many people would I need to reach the goal if that was the one they chose? I mean, they didn't even buy the other one, so it was like 750 something. I said, okay, well, I can do that for sure. I know I can do that. So it's just a simple math. And then it's like, do I have the fan base to do that? I do. So, when I'm looking at, not even so much social media followers, but more like my email list actually is more important to me than social followers, So those people are like, it's a lot more intimate. We're a lot more connected. And, a lot of people have been on my list for like a long time too. So they mean a lot.
Absolutely. When you have your tribe, you have your street team, which is, I think, probably been a pretty decent success for you. I have found that a very interesting strategy, and I've been part of that campaign. And I mean, you're really right. I don't know if I've ever seen a campaign that has brought fans in from everywhere and from every angle. And I think the response has obviously been pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. So far, I think we have like 12 or 13 different countries of people. And you'll notice, I don't need millions of fans to accomplish this. Like, we have 500 and something backers right now, and we're just hit over $40,000. Yeah. So you don't, for other artists listening too, like, you don't need millions of fans to make it work. You just need to find a niche, and you need to have like good music, and you need a niche that people love and will cling to. And then really excited about it. And then really anything is possible from there. I have other things going on too. So this is like, a big chunk of my time obviously dedicated to this, but there are people who could spend even more time than I do on their, planning these sorts of things. They could even do better. So yeah, I think it should encourage people to see, whoa, she's accomplishing this with only 500 backers right now. Like, what could I do?
Well, it's very equivalent to just writing a business plan, writing a simple business plan. And like you said, don't jump into it. Don't say, hey, this band made a ton of money. I mean, put a little thought into it, and success can be achieved. And, you certainly see a lot of these funding campaigns fail. And I think, you nailed it on the head. It's because they just don't do their homework, and they don't realize what's realistic.
definitely. Yeah.
All right, so let's talk a little bit. I do want to touch before we go on to the new album, just kind of your influences. I think I probably know that to a certain extent, but your influences growing up and kind of your vocal training and how did you develop your voice and just kind of a little bit about what led you to here.
Yeah, my influences definitely stem back to childhood and my teen years where I was introduced to Celtic music, folk music, just through family friends. And then I kind of learned more about heavy metal in my later teen years, where like real metal, not mainstream metal, but
Yeah.
like real metal. I think the first like real heavy metal band that I fell in love with was it was Dream Theater and it was Symphony X. I loved Russell's voice. I was
Okay.
like, whoa, I didn't know you got because I had heard I've heard like death metal and I was like, I just can't get into that. I just can't like the guitars are really cool. Like I like other aspects of it, but I just can't get into the vocals. That was my first taste of it. But I liked Russell's voice. I just thought it was like, wow, he's like a real good singer. Like I really like that. And then from there it was like then I learned about Nightwish and I was like, whoa, what is that? The operatic type thing. I was like, okay, that's like pretty dramatic. I've never heard anything like that before. And then it was Within Temptation, and I just like, oh wow, there's this whole genre of like female fronted symphonic metal stuff, and I really really like this a lot. And before I knew it, by the time I was already writing songs since I was 13, just like singer songwriter style, very more influenced by like Sarah McLachlan and Lorena McKenna, people like that. But then when I started, just developing my own songwriting style later, I was like, oh, how can I like fuse my favorite influences together? And I just did that. And really that's more of a production thing. I would just continued writing songs the way I write songs, but then it was more of like production. When it comes to production, that point, it's like depends on the instruments you're using. It depends on the virtual instruments you're using, who's producing it and whatnot. That is determining really the end result of where it lands, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think that's. Does that answer your questions?
Yeah, and then just kind of your vocal training, your voice. Were you a natural singer? Did you take a lot of lessons?
I did not. I've only really started doing training as an adult now. Just because I felt like I was reaching some limitations in what, the songs I would write for myself. And then I'd be like, oh my gosh, why did I write it in that key? And, having to, well, for me, I'm definitely addicted to self-improvement. Like I would say that with health, I would say that with business, I would say that with my skill levels on all fronts. And you can't do everything at once, right? So there's seasons for this. So I'm not constantly training vocals, but to answer your question, I didn't do any lessons when I was younger. It was all self-taught. So everything up until basically this album now was self-taught. I did a little bit of like I want to say like not correspondence, but like self-training with a program called Singing Success. I'm actually very good friends with the owner of that program, Brett Manning, Singing Success. And now I've been training with one of their coaches for the last year, just off and on when I really needed it. And really has really helped a lot. Like I can do things now that I couldn't before. And a lot of it is to do with coordination, like vocal cord coordination. And it's like anything else, like the more you do it, the more natural it is. And the less you do it, you kind of forget how to do it. So with my busy life, I have to make sure that I'm practicing this stuff, all the time, which I don't. So I need to. But Brett Manning and Singing Success is the program I really highly recommend for other people. They have a great online program. And I think they have a membership, and he's just a fantastic guy. He's a good friend of mine now.
That's amazing. That's most people. Some people have to sing all their lives to get to that point, and I was born with no singing ability whatsoever. There are some of us that just can't do it, so that is unbelievable. So the new album, The Quest, your fourth studio album.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, first of all, I kind of thought Kings and Queens, that was really a jump forward in your career. I really thought that was an incredible album. I would say it's one of the best albums in the last few years. Uh, I listen to it endlessly still to this day. And now you're talking about all this vocal training and all these things you've done to even get better. So I imagine as we're now taking this jump to this fourth album and you continue to learn the business and recording and singing and all of this, this must be another pretty good jump and pretty incredible album, I'm imagining, once we get to hear it.
I hope so. I hope you guys think that. I would say, and as far as a forward jump, or yeah, I'm not. Do you mean like vocally or just musically?
Just kind of everything as you go along. I kind of feel like each of your releases has definitely taken a step as you've obviously gotten better with the business, with recordings, and who you've met and who you've gotten to work with is obviously a big one as well.
Yeah.
But I just think each notch up this, each album has taken a step forward up the ladder.
Cool. Thanks. Yeah, I think my goal as a vocalist and as I improve myself is it's never to like sound like anyone else. It's to sound like more and more like me. What do I sound like? What do I sound like when I can access all the tools of my voice, when I can access all the departments and tones that I want whenever I want? That's really the goal. And same with the music. It's like not like, oh, I need to write something heavier or more this or that. It's just like, what is coming out and how can I make it the best that it can be? And actually that was the real benefit of working with Oliver Phillips's time as my producer, is he just, it really encouraged me to let the music be what it needs to be. Because at first I thought I was going to make a non-metal album, because I've had a plan to do that for a while. And as I started writing it, it was like, no, this is definitely not a non-metal song. We have to add guitars here. We have to add guitars there. And before I knew it, was like, okay, this is not that album at all. So just let it be what it needs to be and be okay with it. And that way it's going to be the most authentic and best music I could possibly put out there. So that's what we did.
That's funny. You actually nailed my next question, because I had read that you first had started thinking this wouldn't be a metal album, and then when I talked to you a little bit up in Vancouver, you mentioned it just, the music took you where it took you. So I think that was great. So with this album, I know you released the song about Skyrim. You're obviously doing a lot of fantasy metal and all of that. So is this kind of like a concept album at all, or does it just carry the same themes, or kind of what's the basis for the album?
I never really get too much into specific concepts. In fact, I tend to write very vague. And it's somewhat intentional, somewhat just my natural style. So it's not like a specific concept. It's not like, oh, this is a Skyrim album. But I would just say it's like inspired by fantasy. It's inspired by, it's like real life too. Like just things that inspire me generally, just like beautiful scenery, landscapes, places in the world, magical things. And then, the fantasy is an aspect that I like to bring in there. So it's not a specific concept, it's more of a theme. And I tend to really like themes. So you'll definitely see themes throughout the songs, for sure.
No doubt. From the pictures you post on your Facebook page, I could make a vacation list for the rest of my life on some of those photos. I have a hard time believing some of those are real places. It's like you look them up and you're just like, oh my God, they're just stunningly. Some of the pictures you put up are just stunning locations. I did want to talk a little bit about your guests on here. Funny enough, I was in Anaheim a few weeks back doing a photo shoot for Delane, and I was in the green room talking with Timo Summers quite a bit. And we actually talked some about you and the work he's done on your albums, and such a fantastic guitarist. And then you have Troy Donocoli from Nightwish on there, who I think was a spectacular addition to Nightwish, which I didn't think Nightwish could get any better, and I think that made him better. So, pulling these aspects into your album, what a gift to be able to, you talk about the great producer, you've got Timo, you've got Troy, It's pretty unbelievable. I mean, I cannot even imagine what this album must sound like with these guys being on it.
Yeah, every single one of them brought a piece of magic that would be missing without them now. Like, I don't think I got to hear Troy's flutes. Like, he recorded them like almost not quite a year ago, like a while back. And so I got to hear it last though. Like, it was like the last thing we kind of added in to the mix. When I got to hear it back, I was like, oh my gosh, this is beautiful. And it adds so much, I don't know, like magic, sparkle, something like that to, like, it's exactly what it needed. So, oh yeah, I'm absolutely thrilled to have every single one of them on there. And what I like to do, I really like to encourage them to be themselves. Like, we do have somewhat parameters, like, hey, can you play in this specific part, but not so much telling them what to play, except for really guitars and drums. So there's a lot of flexibility within that. And like Timo's solos are his solos, right? Like, I couldn't even direct that if I wanted to. There's no way. So yeah, they really bring their own personal flair to the parts, and without really much prompting from me, or Oliver. And so what you're hearing on there is really them. It really is them, their personality.
So they're listening to what you've laid down and just kind of getting the vibe of it and putting what they feel should fit right into it.
Exactly.
Wow, that's amazing. So we should talk a little bit. I mean, you are so unique. You are recording with people all over the world. You obviously aren't all getting together every couple of weeks and sitting around in a stage studio. You're doing this via the internet, sending sound files back and forth. That's pretty incredibly unique way to make albums, and you know, Kings and Queens was such a fantastic album. I assume it was done the exact same way as this one. You know, that's got to be an interesting process, but it seems to work pretty seamless for you.
Yeah, with technology nowadays, it's really easy. It's just a matter of people getting clean recordings where they are, and most musicians these days have home recording equipment, like everybody does. So getting a really good clean sound, and then it's a matter of really zipping files over to the producer who's like, you know, editing stuff, and then that's really it. Like, it's simple. And so this is another reason why I feel like it's the best time in the history of the music industry to be a musician. Like, I could not, even 10 years ago, this wasn't possible, where I could, work with people in Germany, Netherlands, Israel, like Finland, all these different places, and me be here in Canada, not leave my house and be recording vocal. Like, this is a full-scale international project without any of us, like, we're all doing this in our pajamas. Essentially, like, who knows? Maybe Timo was naked. I don't know. Could happen. I wouldn't be surprised.
And I think I mean, it's an international band, and how cool is that? I mean, you know, like you said, as a Canadian artist, you know, and even being in America, we don't have a lot of symphonic metal bands just sitting around to practice and play with. So the ability to pull all these people in is just incredible. I mean, it's really neat what technology has done for music.
Yes, and like we did, my vocals were all done at my house as well, but we used a special new software that allows me to, when I record it recorded in real time over on Oliver's desktop. So it didn't record on my computer, it recorded on his computer, even though I was singing, you know, into my microphone. So it was traveling, and like the lag time was so small, it was like within like 2 seconds lag time. So I was singing and it was recording there, and he had a perfectly crisp, clean vocal with only a couple seconds of lag, and that's the whole album we did that way. So it's amazing.
It is amazing. I've done a lot of interviews, and I've never heard anything quite like that.
Yeah. I mean, there was luckily, I mean, he is friends with the developer of the software we were using, so, you know, we got access to some beta versions, which really helped, because it was a bit buggy at first, the software we were using, which it's from Cubase, and I believe it's called, we'll have to think for a second what it's called now, but anyways, it's their It's their program that they have. It is released where bands, I mean, you can record entire albums this way with other bands where it's all, you're recording in real time on someone else's computer, whoever's, manning the controls and whatnot. And they can even control things from their side. So it's just brilliant.
Yeah, that changes the world of music. I mean, quite simply, that's a game changer.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's really neat. So I'm going to ask you the $1 million question. I don't expect to get an exact answer, but assuming you hit the Indiegogo number, when will we see the new album?
The goal and the plan is within the next few months.
Okay.
For sure. Yeah. So there is some lag time. The reason why, and I would release it sooner, but the reason why is, and this is something a little annoying and frustrating and across the board, is that there takes a certain amount of time between when you have printed the albums, like you have them in your hand, you're holding these albums in your hand, and sending them all to distributors. And that process, there's always a 3-month allowance between the time you've sent it, when they receive it, and when you can actually release it. I don't know who writes these rules. I don't know why it's that way, but it is that way across the board. I think everybody I've talked to is the same way. You can't shorten that 3-month window. And so that's why it takes so long. And it's a bit annoying because I think we'd be ready to go a little sooner than that. But so I don't have a specific date for you, but we're essentially planning as soon as possible. And that was a little bit dependent on, how well this campaign goes. But I think we're going to get there.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good explanation. And I have a friend, Meryl, in the lane, who you obviously know, and they had some hiccups too, like their albums that they sold during their campaign. They did not realize how long it was going to take to get those albums printed, and they still don't ship till the end of June, and that campaign's been over for weeks and weeks, and that date kept moving on them. So I understand your frustration there. I've heard that before.
Yeah, and it's just something that you have to take into consideration. So there's a lot of moving parts, and I think sometimes fans don't realize that. They don't realize how many moving parts, and a lot of times the musicians, especially if they're independent, they're orchestrating all of this themselves. It's a lot of pressure because we don't want to piss off our fans. We want to keep them happy, and we want them to be thrilled with, we want them to be glad that they supported us, and we want them to continue supporting us. We want to, so then you're kind of crossing over into like customer service, right? Which can feel like, for a musician, it's stressful when you go into a customer service point of view. And so that's something I think a lot of musicians don't prepare for when they go into a campaign as well, is that, you launch a campaign, and even if you meet your goal, your work has just begun. There's so much more that's happening now after that they don't realize. So, you don't want to think of your fans as customers, but in this situation, that's what it is a little bit. Yeah. So, you want to keep them happy. You want to keep them up to date. You want to make sure you have enough support around you. Like, even if it's a friend helping you out, fulfilling these orders and like planning out, there's just a lot of moving pieces. And so I hope that, fans listening to this will maybe have a little bit of compassion and empathy for the musicians doing it. And then also any musicians listening, like, you just have to think about these parts of it, because it's not easy, but definitely worth it.
Well, and I think, and one of the things I've learned so much about doing this over the last year and talking to musicians and becoming friends with some, and for you it's a little different. We'll talk about this in a second, but obviously for most of them, it's being on stage every night. It's their 2 hours. What goes in to get to that 2 hours is a lot of grueling work, and doing the albums and the touring and the practice, the rehearsals, being on the bus, the plane flights. I mean, the whole 9 yards. I don't know if fans realize a lot of times what artists have to do to get their music out, and that's probably the thing I've learned the most over the last year, and really learned an appreciation. Obviously pop music dominates our culture, and people like pop music, and some of it's all right for me, but I don't want to listen to just one kind of music. So when we have musicians such as yourself, the Nightwishes and stuff have kind of gotten bigger, but there's a lot of bands that really struggle. They really work hard to do this, and I do, like you, I hope the fans really appreciate it, because if not, we're going to be listening to what the radio stations tell us to listen to, and I don't think any of us want that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. fans who appreciate their artists, I mean, support them, right? Because
Yes.
this is what makes the world go round. This is what keeps the music alive, is having that support and not trying to get everything for free. I mean, we already give away so much for free. Like you can stream everything, which is practically free. And so it's just like support the artists you love. You know, that keeps us alive. That's our bread and butter.
Well, I've also been told by numerous artists, if you buy T-shirts, if you buy CDs, if you buy them off the artist website, that you guys get a lot better profit margins, and that definitely helps you be profitable, put out the next album, continue bringing music to the fans. So I think that's important to mention.
Absolutely, absolutely. Always try to buy it from the artist itself if you can. And I mean, that's why I sell a lot of merchandise in between albums. I've gotten more into this year for the fun of it, and also because that's what keeps my music business going, right? So there's ongoing costs. Like, you know, every time I have to reorder albums, that's a lot of cost. Shipping is expensive. You know, there's all kinds of things that people don't realize, and so we're just trying to make a living, right? We've had to become a little more creative and think outside of the box when it comes to that, but we're just trying to make a living. And, you know, I feel like merchandise has always been a big part of the music industry. It's always been part of the business. And so I think we appreciate it when you purchase from us and from our website. Like, that really helps.
Oh, that's good information. And you're right. Your website, your web shop has become kind of a Celtic shopping location. Obviously, music and T-shirts are there, but there is a lot of cool stuff on your website. So another reason to check.
Anyway, so I was saying that everything in my shop that is there, I asked my fans, like, what would you like to see in there? And they told me that those are the types of things they wanted to see in my shop. So I put them there. So essentially, I surveyed them to ask them, like, what do you suggest? So I didn't just come up with stuff on my own and pull my ideas out of the sky, which I could easily do. I first asked my fans, and this to me is the epitome of the new music industry, is that I have a relationship with them, and I ask for feedback, and they give me that feedback, and then I act on that feedback. I think it through, and I'm looking at my costs, I'm looking at all these things on the business end, but the point is that I'm asking them, they're giving me feedback, and that's when I act on things. So that also means that you have to get rid of the celebrity mystique that some artists try to have. That means you can't have that anymore. You have to be down to earth and humble and transparent, and you can't have that. So it's a sacrifice that some artists want that. They want that mystique. They don't want to have that. Their fans have that kind of access and input and insight. I don't know why. You know, in the old days, I think maybe it made the artist feel super special, and I don't know what, but basically I knew if I'm going to do this myself, if I'm going to be independent, if I'm going to make this work, I have to get rid of all of that. I can't have ego. Ego is not in the equation at all. You can't have any kind of really wall between you and your fans. And if you're willing to do that, you can be successful. If you're not willing to do that, you're going to have a hard time unless you have some kind of like huge label support.
Interesting. That is about as brutally honest as I think I've ever heard an artist be about things. I mean, that's very cool. And I mean, I think it shows, at least to me. I mean, like I said, between the tribe and the street team and the Facebook page, and, you know, I've generally gotten responses to you, and I've sent messages about stuff, and it's pretty incredible. And I think that's also what helps things like the Indiegogo campaign, because like you said, fans feel connected, far more likely to support an artist they feel connected to than someone they don't. I think it's real simple.
Right. And when you're small like me, and I still think I'm somewhat underground. I don't ever intend on being a household name. If I was, I don't know how I'd feel about that. But you know, when you're small and underground and independent, you can't afford to be anything else other than connected to your fans. If you're not connected to your fans, you don't have a viable music business. Like, it's just a hobby, and that's fine. Hobbies are great. But if you want to make it a business, you better get with the program, start being vulnerable, start being transparent, start being connected to your fans, let them have input. Not so much in like your songwriting, but just like input into you and just like have a relationship with them. And I think that's the difference between independent artists right now who are succeeding and the ones who aren't.
Yeah, that seems simple, but it's hard to do, and it takes a lot of effort. And I think you're right. A lot of artists take it for granted, and like you said, they probably don't succeed in the long run.
Yeah, it's tough.
So for a while there, and I assume you're still doing this, but you were doing a lot of like the Savvy Musician Academy, or you're doing training for other musicians for social media and all of that. And obviously you have a wealth of information. I've even watched some of the stuff that you've posted online, free advice that I've used on my own music website, not even as an artist, but just as someone who's trying to promote their website to the masses. I've stolen some of your ideas and used them, and they have worked. And that's got to feel pretty good to be able to help people and offer that knowledge up. And you know, I know, once again, I'll refer back to Meryl, who and Delane, who has followed a lot of that stuff from you, and also has taken a lot of information. And you know, I think that's great that artists are willing to help each other, and that you have that program that artists can be a part of. Sorry, nice cat.
Cat.
he was going to jump across either way. But anyway, just talk about that a little bit and kind of how that came to be.
Yeah, Savvy Musician Academy. I'm getting a weird echo all of a sudden. The cat interfered with the airwaves.
Interference.
Yeah. Savvy Musician Academy was born out of really me just trying to expand my music career, like streams of income for my music career. So it really just, you know, after Kings and Queens, I was starting to see a lot of success. Like I was actually able to pay the bills with money I was making from royalties and selling albums and t-shirts and all of that. And so that was really amazing because we were having some tough financial times. And so the fact that my music was able to support us at certain points was like mind-blowing to me. My mind was blown that was even happening. As a mother who had, you know, I had a newborn after Kings and Queens. So I have 5 kids, in case anybody's wondering, because I'm completely insane, apparently. But I have 5 kids. And so, you know, like the fact that I was paying the bills with my music as a stay-at-home mom who's never toured, I've never done a tour, just strictly from my recordings, was a crazy, crazy thing. I just think that nobody in their right mind would say that's even possible. So ended up having lots of friends and colleagues asking me, like, what on earth are you doing to get these kind of results? And so it actually started out as just a little ebook, because that's all I had time for. I wrote it in an ebook, had it edited and everything. And I thought, well, you know what would be really cool is if I could sell this ebook, and that would help like supplement my income, because it's still like my music business, right? Like it's still me working on my music business. I'm just sharing what I'm doing. And as I continued to study marketing and study, just like I started getting into business, I was like, I gotta learn how to market my music even better. Like I'm having success, but I want to learn how to market it even better. So I started investing some of those royalties I was getting into marketing courses and business courses, and I actually stopped studying the music business altogether. I stopped studying the music business, and I just started studying business. And that's when things really took off with my music. And then I took that ebook, and that became a course called The Online Musician. And that's our core program that we have now at Savvy Musician Academy. And that core program, I was not expecting for it to take off the way it did. So this was a complete shock and surprise to me. I learned how to give presentations, like do webinars, and I marketed my course, The Online Musician. It was like how a non-tour. I mean, if you tour, that's great, but you don't even have to if you don't want. And so it's all about calling the shots, how to create music, how to launch music online, how to market it online as an independent artist, everything from crowdfunding, all this stuff. And so it's basically, I tried to create something kind of complete, and it's very complete, social media and all that. And that just exploded. Like literally the first month I launched it exploded. And like I said, I was not prepared for that at all. And so at that point, like within a few months, my husband quit his job and started working with me full time doing that. And so we are, I guess, almost 2.5 years into Sad Musician Academy, and that's definitely like that's all him and I do together is that business. And so I'm coming out with like an elite coaching program pretty soon, and I just, I didn't realize I had such like there was an inner coach in me that needed to come out, that I didn't know I had. So that has been another calling that I didn't realize I had until it surfaced. And, people kind of brought it out of me. And so now that's my other passion is teaching and coaching. And I love it. I love it. It's just a totally different side to me that I didn't know was there. And I didn't know it was something I needed to do until it kind of happened. And so, yeah, it's been a crazy ride, crazy journey. So that, is probably where I'm spending a lot of my other time. We actually have a staff and everything for that whole business. And so, yeah, we're doing that. And that's something I might venture down the line as well is I have a lot of people approach me about how can they create businesses out of their expertise, So I've had rock stars and people approach me about, how can I take my knowledge of what I do really well and turn that into a business. And so that's something that I'd love to maybe get into down the road as well.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some crossover in what you do. And I mean, like you said, these last 3.5 years for you, God, you could write a book on it. It's really an amazing.
I did, actually. This year, January, I was sick for a month and I wrote a book. So that it's all about the music industry and the music business. And it's being edited over the summer. It'll probably launch out later in the year. In case I'm not ambitious enough already, I just added that to my plate too. But
I actually look forward to reading. I love learning about the insides of this. Every interview I do just fascinates me, and I really appreciate your honesty and your candor here today. I mean, this has got to be the most honest interview I've ever done with an artist, and what you've shared. And you even touched on it a little bit, but mother of 5, I believe you homeschool your children.
Yep.
You record albums, you release other singles like the Skyrim video, and you've done lots of other little videos that have come out. You don't tour, but you've just, what you've managed to accomplish is really incredible. I know you've talked about some point in the future that you would like to do some touring. I was ever wondering if you'd ever even just do like a one-off show in Vancouver or a couple of shows in Vancouver, or, how realistic is a tour, say, in the next 5 years even?
I'd say it's definitely realistic within the next 5 years. Doing a one-off show would be less realistic because of the preparation that it takes to pull off a great, like all that rehearsing, all of that, the logistics and put it for one show. No. So it would have to be either like, like a leg of some kind where I'm just like a 2-week leg or something, or, I'm doing a bunch of festivals or something a little bit bigger because, like I said, for all the time, effort, energy, money that goes into the logistics of planning all of that, it would need to be worth it. So the way I can determine that it's worth the effort is really album sales, because album sales tell us that there's a demand for the music in a specific city or area. So the best thing you can do is if someone's listening and they want me to tour there, the best thing you can do is buy the album, because that tells me that there's a demand for me to come to your city. And that's just the way it is. It literally, that's it. How do venues or like tour managers determine where someone's playing? It's album sales, and they look at demographics, and depending on the situation, obviously, if it's an opening band or whatever. But if I don't know what my situation is going to be, but I do know that there needs to be demand for me to come. And so I'm kind of doing things backwards. I'm and a lot of artists that go on tour to get their name out there and to meet a lot of people, and that's great. And it's more of a discovery process for them. I'm completely doing it backwards. I'm building my fan base first until there's enough demand that justifies the expense and the logistics of going on tour. So in that way, I'm hoping that my first tour will be a really big success and that I'll have full shows and maybe even some sold out shows. Who knows? But So I'm just completely going about it in a different way. And with my family and I touring, or not touring, traveling a little over the summer, that'll be a really good way for me to just test the waters about what it'd be like traveling with my family. Because I do have some younger kids, so like my youngest is 3.5. So far, I think it'll be great. But that was one of the roadblocks for me was I didn't think it would be great for my kids because I'm not leaving them. That's one thing. That's why I don't tour. The whole point was that I'm not sacrificing my kids for my career. So I was like, how can I make it work as a non-touring artist? So that's what I'm doing. But I know that it's a timing thing as well because if I do tour, I'm going to jump in with 2 feet. I'm not going to dabble in it. I'm going to jump in and I'm going to get really good at it and it'll be an amazing show. So that I have to have other things cleared off my plate to make availability for that sort of thing. But the more albums I can sell, the more I am, motivated and the demand is there for me to actually do it. So, if you're listening, buy an album and have your friends buy an album, and that's the best way to indicate that I should come there and tour.
No, that's fantastic. I think you've done a couple of things I find amazing. One, you've found a way to be a musician and a mother and a wife and raise a family, which is extremely tough if you're a touring musician. And I'm going to refer to, and this will be a little bit of a weird reference, and you've probably heard this before, but Garth Brooks, one of the biggest selling artists of all time, came home from a tour and basically found a couple of nanny strangers taking care of his kids, and didn't like what they were being taught, and Garth Brooks walked away in the prime of his career to raise his children because he wanted to raise his children. He didn't want strangers raising his children. And whether you like country music or not, I have unbelievable amount of respect for that man and what he did and what he gave up for his kids. And I think it's powerful what you're doing and kind of the message you're sending, and it's great that you're showing that there's not just one way to do this. And for someone like me who's a symphonic metal fan, I would love to see you on tour. I'm not going to lie, but it doesn't matter to me. I eagerly wait the next album and have already, purchased a bundle and can't wait to hear it. And we'll probably listen to it to death. So it's a great story. I really thank you for your candor and what you've shared today. And it's this has definitely been one of the more unique interviews I've ever done. So I do appreciate the time and thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. It's my pleasure. I can't be any other way other than authentic and kind of just transparent. That's what I do, and I just can't be any other way. So I'm just glad. Yeah.
Well, that's good because a lot of times you get guarded answers. You can tell they're guarded, and I get why. But it's just nice to hear something so unique and so refreshing. I think this really sets it aside from anyone else I've ever talked to.